The family of Masons in Texas is primarily composed of the Grand Lodge of Texas and its 846 subordinate lodges. Those 846 subordinate lodges are the homes for now approximately 90,000 Masons. The Masonic fraternity is unique. Only requires three things to be a Mason. You must have a belief in a supreme being. Now, you may call him God, you may call him Allah, you may call him Jesus, but that belief in that supreme being is absolutely necessary, or you're never permitted to be a Mason. So, the first cornerstone of Masonry is you must have a belief in a supreme being. The second is, and some people consider this to be the most difficult, you must be a man of good character. But when we're trying to determine a man's character, you're trying to determine how he's going to live his life for the rest of his life, whether he be 18 years old or 90 years old. We've had men in that age join the fraternity. And you're trying to find how he has lived his life up to that moment. You visit his home, you meet his family, he refers you to other Masons that he has known, and you try to determine if he's a man of his word and his character is really there. Upon determining that he is a man of good character, you then move to the next cornerstone. And the third cornerstone, and I consider one that distinguishes this fraternity from all other organizations around the world, knowing that this fraternity goes across every geographical and physical boundaries, oceans, mountains, borders. We're around the world, and that is that we meet on the level. Now, to me, that's something that has to be heartfelt. That's the first thing when a man tells me he's interested in being a Mason. I tell him about the Supreme Being, that he must profess his belief. I tell him that he must be a man of good character. But I explain to him what meeting on the level means. And what that means to me is that the moment that man petitions, and for the rest of his Masonic career, we judge his actions by his character, disregarding any kind of education, wealth, whatever, and judge him on his character. That's meeting on the level. That's the Masonic fraternity.
The history of Texas and the history of Masons are tied closely together. When you think of Texas history, you think of people like Davy Crockett, Jim Bowie, Travis, Juan Seguin, Lorenzo de Zavallo, Thomas Rusk, Sam Houston, Stephen F. Austin, on and on. These were all Masons. These were all Masons that came into Texas and helped Texas form or gain her independence from Mexico. The Grand Lodge of Texas was formed in 1837. It was actually a group of Masons that were part of Austin's colony that wanted to have a lodge here. They come from different parts of the United States into Texas and wanted to have a lodge. So to have a lodge, they had to petition some other Grand Lodge to get permission to do so. So they petitioned Mexico, the Grand Lodge of Mexico. And it was during that important time in Texas history that Texas and Mexico were at odds. It's before the Revolution, but they were at odds. And they never heard back from the Mexican Lodge. So they decided, because of the political climate, to drop it. Right after Texas started fighting for their independence, another group petitioned the Grand Lodge of Louisiana. They said not Mexico, but Louisiana. And it was granted by a man named Holland, who was a Grand Master in Louisiana at the time. And the petition actually arrived in Texas just in time for the Battle of San Jacinto in the saddlebag of Anson Jones, and was in the saddlebag during the entire battle. So after Texas won her independence, the first lodge was Holland Lodge number 1, chartered and named after the Grand Master of Louisiana. That was the first Masonic lodge in Texas. Now, shortly after that, a year in 1837, after Texas had been a republic for about a year, another group of Masons got together, decided to have a Grand Lodge, and the first group to form the first Grand Lodge was presided over by Sam Houston. And then the next year, Anson Jones was elected as the first Grand Master of Texas. Texas education, public education at Texas Masonry in the early days. Most of the Masonic lodges were also used as the first public schools because they were a convenient place to meet. They were set up for meeting, and they weren't being used during normal school days. So Texas Masons are credited with starting the first public schools in Texas, by allowing their lodges to be used as the schoolrooms. Maribel B. Lamar came to Texas from Georgia, and he signed up in the Texas Army. He signed up as a private. So he's at Sam Houston's camp at just before San Jacinto, and his friend, also from Georgia, Thomas Rusk, and a group of Rusk men were actually trapped behind Mexican lines. So somebody had to go rescue them. So Lamar hops on a horse, and this isn't exactly how it happened, but this is the way I love to tell the story. Hops on a horse, grabs a sword, and with a group of his men, and he charges the Mexican lines. And he charges right through the line. The Mexican line virtually parted. Let him come through. They gathered up Rusk's men, and they headed back through. It was such a show of bravery that the Mexican soldiers laid down their arms and cheered for him as he went back through. So he gets back to the Texas line, and Sam Houston hears about what happened. Sam Houston goes up and makes him a major. And he actually led the cavalry charge at the Battle of San Jacinto. And when Lamar was the second president of the Republic of Texas, Lamar is known as the father of education in Texas. He founded many of the first public schools. He set aside money for state universities, and virtually worked very hard to establish public education in the state of Texas. The thing about Texas history and Masonry that has always fascinated me the most was the fact that the heroes of Texas were all Masons. All of the presidents of the Republic of Texas were Masons. Over half of the signers of the Texas Declaration of Independence were Masons. They weren't heroes because they were Masons, but yet they were Masons. The guys like Davy Crockett and Jim Bowie and Sam Houston and Edwin Ward Moore, who was the Commodore of the Texas Navy, and Stephen F. Austin. So when you study Texas history and you hear of the heroes, the founders of Texas, chances are very good they were Masons.
My family has gotten involved in Masonry by becoming members of certain groups that are available to them. My wife got involved by being a member of the Order of Eastern Star, which is a Masonic group for women and men, but women have to have a Masonic affiliation. That could be any male relative, or if their mother was an Eastern Star, that allows them to participate as well. My daughter has gotten involved through the International Order of Rainbow for Girls, which is a Masonic youth group for girls that teaches leadership and civic responsibility. And then there are also ways for those that have sons that like their boys to participate can join the International Order of Demolay. Each youth group teaches and stresses important moral lessons and values. They teach civic responsibility. You learn leadership skills, and you also create bonds, worldwide bonds that are lifelong and lasting. One of the things I enjoy about Masonry and appreciate is being able to travel around the world and being accepted no matter who you are and where you're from. And kind of give you an example, I went to Mexico with some brothers, and we went to a Masonic lodge we had never visited. And when we met the brothers there, we were received so openly and warmly as if we were long-lost blood brothers that they had not seen in years. And that's pretty comforting to be able to go anywhere, primarily anywhere in the world, and have that reception. And that's a strong bond that you can't get in any other fraternity or civic organization. And those are the kinds of bonds that the Masonic youth groups support as well, because they are involved in not only local but national activities as well, and those are lifelong bonds that they will carry on and have with them for their entire life. The time restraints that we have in Masonry include just the multiple facets of life in having family that are involved in sports, families that are involved in extracurricular school activities, which limits one's ability to participate in Masonry. So those we have to take into consideration as well. And one of the things that we espouse in Masonry is that the activities that we do in Masonry should not detract from our responsibilities to our God, our religion, our family, and work. At the local level, a lot of lodges will have participatory programs like Family Day. They'll do picnics, they'll do dinners, holiday dinners. Valentine's dinner is a big one at a lot of the local lodges. At the state level, the Grand Lodge will sponsor a Masonic Family Day at the Masonic Retirement Center in Arlington, and that's a pretty big to-do. But there's usually always something, either local lodges or at state level, that affords the family members to participate as well. Masonry can make me a better father by me taking in and learning the lessons of Masonry, the moral and ethical lessons that we have, and that it shows me how to improve myself and become a better person, understanding who I am. And by that, the extension of becoming a better person makes me a better man. Better man should be a better father and a better husband to my wife. And then by that extension, that family gets better from having that relationship, and the community at large becomes better.
There's this thought out there that Masonry is a secret society. It's actually pretty far from the truth when you think about it. Masonry, aside from, a couple of modes of recognitions, our handshakes and our words, and specifics to our ceremonies, we can share almost anything else. We could talk to you about the teachings of our fraternity. We could talk to you about the morals of our fraternity. We could talk to you about the lessons within our fraternity. And in fact, most Masons, especially Masons my age, will be eager to share those with members of the outside community. If you want to be a Mason, you have to ask to be a Mason. Nobody's going to come up to you and ask you to join our fraternity. It's part of our heritage, it's part of our tradition, and there are some very particular reasons why you will never be asked to be made a Mason. But if it is your desire to become a Mason, you need to find a Mason, you probably already know one, and tell them that you want to become a Mason. And what they'll do is they'll invite you to join their lodge, they'll invite you to meet with the brethren there, and after you get to know the brethren in the lodge, and they know you, then they'll give you a petition once they feel comfortable, and you feel comfortable with them. You fill out the petition, there are several questions on there, and once you get that filled out, you turn that in to a lodge, and then that lodge at its next stated business meeting will assign a committee, and this committee will be comprised of 3 other Masons. Their job is to investigate you as a candidate for Masonry and to make sure that your intentions are pure, that you want to join for the right reasons, but also to make sure that you're a good man. Masonry's stated purpose is to take a good man and make him better, not to take a bad man and make him good. And there's some very serious reasons for that. The main one being is we are a brotherhood, and we take care of each other, we look after each other. And we want to make sure that we only allow good men to become Masons. So really what this investigation process is for is to make sure that we're letting in quality candidates to then try to help them to improve themselves and make themselves better men. So that's kind of the walkthrough of how to first obtain a petition and then the process afterwards. Masonry teaches through ritual. This is the only organization that I know of that teaches through degrees. It also has a certain history to it. It's been around forever. And when I think about Freemasonry, I remember the night I was going to get initiated, I was standing at the door, and I was about to finally figure out what was inside the lodge and how everything worked and operated. And there was just a very solemn moment in there, and I thought to myself, this is where George Washington once stood, a member of our fraternity, and I'm standing in the same spot as George Washington. And, whoever your hero is, Benjamin Franklin, Paul Revere, or if you're in Texas Masonry, of course, Houston, Austin, Bowie, and Davy Crockett, whoever your hero is, good chances are that they might have been a Mason. And to be standing where those people had stood was just awe-inspiring to me, and I will remember that moment for the rest of my life. Masonry also teaches in a very, very old system. The way we teach our lessons is from an instructor to you as the individual candidate. None of this stuff is written down. It's very interesting when you think about it. In the world we live in, with media, the internet, magazines, newspapers, articles being written everywhere, Twitter, Facebook, to think none of this stuff's written down. None of this stuff is going to show up on any of those places. Now, of course, there's all kinds of exposés out on the internet and things of that nature, but true Masonry is taught from an instructor to a candidate. And that personal bond that is created there, and just the experience of it, that's something you don't find in our modern society. And finally, Masonry teaches through allegories and symbols. And you think to the Egyptian days when people couldn't read, they couldn't write, but they could see a symbol and they could understand what it meant. That practice is largely lost on our society today. But in Masonry, that's what we're all about. If you see a square, if you see a compass, if you see the letter G, if you see a double-headed eagle, or if you see a keystone, all these things will mean something to a Mason. And, they don't necessarily always mean the same thing to every Mason, because some of it's left to interpretation. But the idea and the ability to see the world through signs and symbols is something that is truly unique to the Masonic fraternity.